You're listening to the Cash News Podcast with Tom Meehan and Shaun Ferrari.
So let's do a time check.
I think it's around 6 o'clock.
Around 6 o'clock.
After 6.
6 o'clock.
Yep.
So 6 o'clock in DC. I heard the chime that we're recording as well, but it doesn't matter. You're going to see us on YouTube. So day 2, Banknote Conference.
Yep. Day 2 of the Banknote Currency
Hit the
Conference
highlights.
here
Come
in
on.
DC. It was good. So today we talked about a bunch of cash tech, how different technologies are improving cash, the cash cycle, how central banks are thinking about tech, how Amazon and AI are being involved in that process. I mean, it was a very fascinating opening session. We moved through the day, heard about some new security features, some new micro optics, some new nanotechnology, all the stuff that's going in on banknotes. Tom, I know you mentioned before, there's just like a lot of people that are super passionate about banknotes here. And it's definitely a great crowd, great content. We wrapped up the day on, actually in the middle of the day, we had perception studies. So we heard about a lot of work about where the eye tracks on a banknote and what people look at to authenticate a note, and different studies that have been done on that and how that leads into feature development. Then at the end of the day, we heard a bit about ethics in the banknote space, and then talking about risk and security, whether it's what crime trends are in with ATMs and CITs, or cybersecurity. With Tom went into a large explanation of where everybody in this conference has been for the past 2 days and what they're looking at on their iPhones and what have you. But it was a lot of fun, and I think it was a great way to end the day and give folks something to think about tonight and maybe alter their behavior accordingly, or not. But yeah, it's been a good 2 days. I don't know. You've been here as a consumer of this as well as a bit of a participant. Yeah. So what do you
it's super exciting. So it's kind of from both sides of the fence, right? Control Tech has a table here, which is great. And then I started the day off listening to AI and how it's helping with counterfeiting. I thought it was really interesting. And to your note about passionate, everybody who presented today was super passionate. And it was really great. Some of these notes are works of art. Like, I mean, there's no other way to describe it. So I don't know that I would have said that before I got to the conference, but it was really good. Great information, great exchange, more than 400 people. So it's great to see people and from all over the world. So if you're not here, make sure that you come next year. It's awesome to be together, right? It's like Vegas all over again in DC.
It is. It's, in Vegas, it was 30,000 people at a cannabis convention. This is not that, but it's good to be together, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And we're going to try to get some guests tomorrow. We intentionally didn't get guests today because we really wanted to spend time with the audience. And now that we have our audio taken care of, and when you're doing something live in a hotel, you're at the mercy of Wi-Fi and all of these other things. But I think all in all, it went well.
It did. Yeah, this went well. And yesterday, I know folks couldn't hear us all that well, but yesterday we spent a lot of time on COVID trends and what that meant for the cash in circulation and how central banks responded to that and so forth. So did cash use increase? Did it stay increased? Did it decrease? Did it stay decreased? And how do you plan your production, your issuance, and all that stuff around that? So that was, good conversations yesterday as well. Tomorrow, I will say, just to foreshadow, we've got a lot. We're not like winding down for the end of the conference. We've got panels on sustainability and what else? Sustainability and other things. My mind is dead after.
We have a workshop tomorrow, right? Isn't there a workshop all day tomorrow too?
There's a workshop all day tomorrow for central bank digital currency. There's a central bank digital currency think tank led workshop to really deep dive into, as you would expect, central bank digital currency, but not at a high level, but essentially like, how do you do it? How do you do it? Why do you do it? What are the pitfalls? All that sort of stuff, which leads us into Friday's digital currency conference, which has got over 200 people coming now, which is fantastic. So we're thrilled about that, but it's 2 more fun-filled, content-filled days here in DC.
And then 2 years in the making, right? Almost 2 full years in the making. It's wild to say that, right?
It's almost, yes.
It's week like 95 of COVID, I think, it is right now. But notice we don't have masks on.
No, yeah.
So
I will say though, from conferences that I have attended, and I think because this one is more global, we've got folks from all over the world. There are more masks that are being worn kind of by folks that are concerned about that sort of thing than I've seen at some of the US focused conferences. That I've been at. Most of the US ones I've been at, because strictly US, have all like lost masks pretty quickly. This one, there's still a good share, maybe 40%, 50%, I don't know, of folks that I still see, walking around with masks. And that's, so yeah, it's a little different in that respect, but it's good.
But kudos to Currency Research. Your team did a phenomenal job making it really easy, the check-in process. And while it's simple, right? Like the colored lanyards to like make people feel better. Green means you're open for hugs and handshakes. Yellow means you just want to say hello. I mean, simple things like that really make people feel at ease. And you guys did a phenomenal job of setting it up. And I can tell you that, when you're reading, going to conference and you're thinking like, oh, how difficult it is to be, come in, the registration process was great. I think everybody I'm talking to feels safe. And I know you did a poll, but the majority of the group felt safe. And I think you hit the nail on the head of where you're from probably determines that heavily, of what your thought is here. Also, there's a lot of folks that this is the first time they traveled on business in 2 years, which is, again, kudos to you. Like, I mean, that's an awesome.
This is it. I'd say it was something like 80% or something from that survey question that this is kind of the first business travel. Ironically, like only I think 20% of the people, this was their first travel. So
that's still a big number if you really think about it.
Big number, but it also echoes what we've seen out there and noticed on other trips we've had, that it's definitely the personal travel that's kind of ramped up already. The business travel is lagging a bit, but we're trying to push it here, and I think this will start the ball rolling, at least for this community.
So what do you think the key takeaway from day 2 was? Oh, this one's a tough one, right?
That is a tough one. The key take, I think it was, we spent a lot of time on tech today. And I think there's a lot more to understand, honestly. I think the central banks, particularly in the currency space, probably less so in the digital currency space, but still to some extent, are kind of scratching the surface on this whole like AI, DLT, blockchain stuff. I think they have an understanding that it's out there, and that it's useful in some ethereal way. But it's still not evident really, I think, to them what to do with this stuff or how to use it, or the dangers, like you talked about in your presentation. Like there's dangers and risk that comes along with it as well. So it's, I think there's just a lot there that and a lot of the folks here have been in the banknote space for a long time, and they've focused on banknote security and counterfeit threats, and that's a very tangible thing. It's like here's a security feature, somebody can copy it, somebody can't copy it. When you're talking AI and digital risk, it's not that. It's, I don't even know if somebody hacked into this or did this or what I can do. It's a very different way of thinking. I don't know. That's kind of my take.
No, I agree.
There's still a lot of learning to do in that space.
I agree. So one of the things that I saw, which was refreshing for someone from my side, is that while physical was really still important, that there was kind of talk about AI throughout the whole entire day,
which surprised me how much it came up.
So it was refreshing to me, because I know we always talk about, are we behind? And today what I saw was that we started to take the same approach that other industries are taking to security, saying like, hey, we have to start adopting technology in the right way and taking advantage of it. So I thought that was refreshing. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about day 1, because I know yesterday we had some audio problems, but the opening keynote, Mark Gould, one of the things he said, that I was literally smiled, was challenge your assumptions. Like we tend to, in this industry, make assumptions because it's been this way for so long. And hearing someone of that stature say that, and that it's okay to not know. Right. And I'm clearly I'm living, and it's okay. But what I got out of that is you got to challenge assumptions, and sometimes it's okay to not know what the next step is, and that we're part of that process. So I thought yesterday was great. The key takeaway yesterday would be tougher for me, because I think there were a lot of different comments. Today it was definitely AI. I thought I really felt like every conversation had some level of technology, even in the human behavior part and the gazing of the bill. Like there was still this technology emphasis.
There was.
Yesterday, I think the challenge, my takeaway, this is the Tom Meehan takeaway, was really hearing the keynote say, challenge the assumptions. And what I take that from is, we have to start to think differently. And that's one of the things we always talk about with the podcast. So the other thing that came up today and yesterday is, and this is something that I think Shaun and I have to think about, is a large population of people that I talk to. So that's relative, right? Not all 400 people. I probably only talked to 30 people, but there was a consensus of not a clear understanding what podcasts were. So that's something that we're going to work on together to say, hey, this is an audio format. And amazingly, as soon as we explained it, they were like, that's amazing. So I can listen to it.
Yeah.
And how do I do it? So I think that's one of the things that we're going to work heavily on. And we say this all the time, our YouTube viewing is the smallest. We have a much greater listenership, but I think Shaun and I are going to work on both through the Cash News, Currency Research, and Control Tech, distributing some video so that people can get it visually. They can get it on the website if they want to read the blog, or they can listen to it, because although we know that, it was very evident today of where folks were saying, could you show me how to do this?
Right.
So we'll work on that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, again, it's a lot of the function of who, you're talking central bankers from around the world. They're not necessarily podcast listeners. They're just, they're
not yet.
We'll change that.
We will change that.
But I think it's interesting. And I think you mentioned yesterday's kind of takeaway. My theme from yesterday's takeaway was, it's like you were saying from Gould's speech, but it was uncertainty, right? It was like there's been like rapid.
I'm glad he said that instead of me. I didn't want to say that. So thank you. I appreciate that.
There'd be like rapid changes, or there were rapid changes in the cash cycle, in the volumes of cash used, in what cash will be in the future, how it will relate to CBDCs, and central banks are grappling with that internally. So, and Mark's whole theme, which carried throughout the day, I think, on all the panels, was, we have to go in some direction.
Yeah.
So, it's best we all talk to each other, understand, observe what's going on. And you might be wrong, but you're wrong.
No,
but you have to, you have to go in some direction. And his example was basically, often when he's walking around, he may be walking confidently in the wrong direction, but you can always adjust.
And I think that one of the exciting things about that was, and it feels like forever ago, that was the whole emphasis of the podcast, right?
Yeah,
like that there is uncertainty. So can we get people to talk about what that is? And I hate the dirty secret in the room, like, oh, cash is changing. Like, we know that. And that was the whole idea of the podcast, of just to have an open format that's neutral, where guests could come on regardless of whether Shaun and I agree with them, and express their opinion, talk about fact. And that is the purpose of the podcast. So when people ask today, and that was the most common question, is, and a lot of the folks that I spoke to today that had listened to the podcast said, so what's the theme? And I said, it's everything about cash, currency, and payments. And I said, that's the whole idea of that. We just want to have open dialect about that. And this isn't a negative or a positive thing. It's just an open dialect. Uncertainty isn't bad.
No.
And that's the thing. And challenging assumptions aren't bad.
Yeah.
My favorite topic when we talk about digital payments is the confusion from the consumer of digital payments. Is that a credit card? Is that a cryptocurrency? What does it mean? So I think there's a huge education and awareness piece that has to happen. And I think the central bankers have been pretty honest about, like, we're trying to figure it out too. Like, we're trying to figure out what the right message is.
Well, and I mean, even looking at Mark Gould's role now, he's chief payments executive, right? And he went from cash product director several years ago, or last year, to chief payments executive this year, so that there is a umbrella and an executive over all the payments to try to do what we're saying, which is like, let's figure out how they all come together, interact, and rather than have different people in charge of different things, which there are, but let's at least have somebody looking at all of them cohesively. So, I mean, and that's what the central banks are starting to do, trying to figure that out. So no,
I think it was great. And maybe we can get Mark on as a guest. I think it'd be awesome to dig in. I think the listeners would really appreciate it. Of course, if you came to the conference, you would see him live.
That's right.
So
there's still a day.
There's still a day.
If you're listening.
Still 2 days, right?
Still 2 days.
Technically 2 days. Right?
Yeah, if you're listening.
If you're listening and you're close, I'm sure that we would love to see you. But I mean, all joking aside, is it really, the first 2 days were phenomenal from a content perspective. The food was good. The entertainment's good. The company and the interaction, right? The engagement with human beings. And everybody isn't like Shaun and I. We like to have a lot of fun. And I think this group, really, I was super happy to see the level of engagement, even with folks that didn't necessarily have a direct relationship to the topic.
Yeah,
they were engaged in it. And in a conference like this, while it may be very intriguing to learn about banknotes and AI, if that's not what you do, there is a certain level of the curiosity is all it is.
True.
Yeah.
I've actually had people starting to check in today for the digital currency conference workshop tomorrow, and then the conference the next day. They're like, oh, can we like come into this one to just kind of check it out, see what it's about? And just that level of curiosity is kind of refreshing.
Yes.
And the other thing is, if you can't be here at this point, which you probably can't, unless you're going to do something crazy and get here for tomorrow, we are going to be recording. We are recording this whole thing, and we'll package it up, and there'll be ways to get that. So we'll get back to you on that in the future. But if you've missed it, you haven't missed it completely.
Yeah, and I'm sure, like we always do, we'll pick some of the key things and figure out a way to get it to the podcast audience, even if it's snippets, because I think there's value in it. And I think Shaun and I's commitment to everybody in 2022 is to try to figure out how, if you're not a podcast person, which you should be, how to get some of this information to you in a more palatable format. So if video works for you, if blog works for you, we're going to figure out a way to get it out there, because one of the greatest things that I heard yesterday when people are seeing these banners was, I want to learn more. And that curiosity is the key. And especially in the global climate, when you're talking to people that really aren't seeing this every day because where they live, the interest level is exciting and invigorating. So we're going to do more with that. So with that, I think we're gonna end our live. We're gonna go have a few cocktails and possibly eat some food, right?
Got a few more minutes to get some paella and cocktails.
Yeah, we'll be good. And tomorrow we're gonna try.
It's going to be a little interesting tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to be here. The digital currency conference folks are going to start checking in. This lobby that we're in right now is going to be the main lobby for that event and dinner. So there's going to be a bit more buzz here.
We can, we can still do it.
We can do it.
We can do it.
We might just be a little earlier than this. We'll figure it out.
Or we may just be in a different spot.
We may be in a different spot.
Maybe we'll, I know I'm going to make an executive decision. We're going to go into the main area with all the tables. We're going to tape there. It might be a little noisy, but I think it'd be a really cool.
Well, we're tearing that down tomorrow.
It's just crushed it. Crushed my idea.
You could do it now if you want, but tomorrow's going to be rough.
Maybe we will.
Do it at lunchtime.
Lunchtime. Yeah.
We do it at lunchtime.
So we'll maybe we'll do a lunchtime as a special.
We could walk around and watch people eat in the exhibit area.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll avoid the people eating.
Yeah.
Look at the exhibit.
But I think it really, we talk about the conferences all the time. I don't think us talking about it does justice until you see the exhibit area and some of the things. And maybe what we'll do is actually walk around and throw a couple people on the spot to talk about what their key takeaways are. Well, it's all very, very fluid at the Cash News, right? Always.
It is. It's fluid.
Sometimes that's what makes it fun.
We didn't find any breaking news yet. We need to find a piece of breaking news at this event.
There's a gentleman in the back sitting who doesn't want me to call him out, but I guarantee you he has breaking news, and we'll get something from him.
We're going to work on breaking news.
Well, we're going to breaking news. Every time we're together, we
break a story.
And I don't know, sometimes the story is very, very good. Sometimes it's just a story, but we're going to break something. Something's going to occur at this conference that you've never heard before.
Yeah, and it'll be worth talking about.
Absolutely. So if you're watching us live, thank you so much. If you're watching us not live, we still thank you. We'd love you to comment, like, subscribe, do all the things that help us get the news out. And we're going to do our very best to continue to drive the content to you. Shaun, any last final words?
No, I think you covered it well. I think we covered what happened well. We'd love to see you watch us. We appreciate it. Watch, listen. I don't know what it's like to listen to us. It's got to be an experience one way or the other. But we love it here. So
I just want to say two things. Thank you to our sponsors, Currency Research and Control Tech.
Absolutely.
We could not do this without them. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give a special thanks to our cameraman, Jason Emtage, who's behind the camera.
Yeah.
And if you think it's easy to hold a camera for that long without a tripod, it's not. And then our producer, Samantha Goddard. So thank you, everybody. And stay safe, and we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.